new government in Iran and access to oil that drove interest in the arms deal. The U.S. also had an interest in gaining the release of hostages that had been captured by Islamic Jihad. As I stated earlier, on July 1st, 1985, President Ronald Reagan was quoted in the New York Times stating, "The United States gives terrorists no rewards. We make no concessions. We make no deals." He was being completely inauthentic, as 3 days later, Robert McFarlane, an advisor to the NSC, met with the Iranians and the Saudi arms dealer Khashoggi. Ronald Reagan approved the sale of 100 TOW missiles to the Iranians through the Israelis from his hospital bed a mere 13 days after the New York Times quote. As a Paul Christopher Show side note, TOW missiles are designed as anti-tank weapons but can be used to destroy many targets. TOW is an acronym and stands for Tube-Launched, Optically Tracked, Wire-Guided Missiles. On October 20th, 1985, 96 TOW missiles were shipped to Iran from Israel, and $1 million in funds was paid to cover the cost of the transaction. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North was brought in to help manage the logistics. On September 15, 1985, an additional 408 TOW missiles were sold, and hostage Benjamin Weir was released. Benjamin was a missionary active in Lebanon at the time and was kidnapped off the street by Islamic Jihad. The profits from this sale went to the middlemen. Air Force General Richard Secord, who is known for excelling in the execution of covert operations, was brought in to facilitate future shipments of arms to Iran. On a side note, a major general in the Air Force is a 2-star general rank and is awarded to highly regarded individuals. Secord was recognized for his duty during the secret war in Laos, which took place during the Vietnam conflict, and for the only successful POW rescue mission conducted during the conflict. In November 1985, a second sale of arms to Iran was agreed, which provided the first source of funds that went to support the Contras. Secord and another co-conspirator created a shell company named the Stanford Technology Trading Group International. The enterprise, as it was known, was used as a front organization to receive the monies and establish a Swiss bank account. $150,000 of the money was actually used to cover the cost of the arms, in this case, 120 Hawk missiles, and $850,000 was going to go to the Contras. As is the case with the Paul Christopher Show, we will spend a brief moment detailing what Hawk missiles actually are. As you might expect, Hawk is a military acronym that stands for Homing All the Way Killer, and the weapon is a medium-range, surface-to-air missile designed for defense. You can access links for more information about these weapons at paulchristopher.com. When you take a look at the Hawk system, it's hard to believe that these weapons cost only $1,250 apiece. Even if one were to assume that the vehicles needed to transport and launch the system were not included, it still seems like a low cost. Getting back to our main story, the second shipment of Hawk missiles to Tehran, Iran's capital city, turned into a logistics nightmare. After experiencing problems with the second shipment, President Reagan signed a presidential finding authorizing U.S. arms sales to Iran. A presidential finding is also known as a Memorandum of Understanding, and it's a way for the president to authorize the CIA to do something covertly while notifying Congress. The resulting agreement with the Iranians was that the U.S. would provide 1,500 TOW missiles in exchange for $3.6 million US dollars and the release of 1.5 hostages, which meant one hostage for sure and possibly a second, which seems ridiculous. Out of the $3.6 million, $2 million went to the CIA to cover costs, and $1.6 million was funneled to the Contras. The resulting cost of $2,400 per TOW missile makes these weapons almost twice as expensive as Hawk surface-to-air missiles. Getting back to Nicaragua and the Contras, President Reagan wanted to support the Contras with money, weapons, and advice, but he had to get around the Boland Amendment. In order to circumvent it, CIA Chief William Casey and National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane evaluated the possibility of getting money from other countries to support the Contras. Saudi Arabia had already funneled millions, and support was sought from the Israelis. In the spring of 1984, an uproar and backlash commenced when Congress found out that the CIA had mined the harbors of Nicaragua in 1982, which Colonel North knew about and allegedly the president had signed off on. Conservative fundraiser Carl Chanel raises $12 million from private donors in 1985 and provides $2.7 million of it to the Contras. As a Paul Christopher Show side note, Chanel was struck and killed by a car in 1990 as he stood on a street in Washington, D.C. Secord is asked by Oliver North to help in getting supplies to the Contras. Oliver North, in his capacity as an advisor to the NSC, solicits funding from foreign entities to support the Contras, including the Taiwanese, Saudis, and other groups. The Taiwanese provide $1 million for the Contras in 1985. By then, the Saudi contribution ran out, but they donated more. In total, they gave $32 million. In October 1986, a Contras plane was shot down in Nicaragua, with an American captured aboard the plane. Although this would imply direct U.S. involvement with the Contras, in violation of Congress and the Boland Amendment, Congress did not look into the plane downing too much. Otherwise, they would have learned that the CIA had been continuing to carry out sabotage in Nicaragua without first informing Congress, and in violation of the Boland Amendment. The scandal was finally brought to light by the Lebanese newspaper Al-Shiraa. The individuals responsible for the Iran Contra scheme violated the U.S. Constitution, which specifies that Congress must appropriate funds for government operations. The Reagan administration, including the NSC and CIA, circumvented Congress and the Boland Amendment, which banned U.S. aid to Nicaragua from 1982 to 1986, when the Contras were attempting to overthrow the Marxist regime in Managua. Managua is the capital city and largest city in Nicaragua. Further, the Iran Contra Affair violated the National Security Act, which required that the administration notify Congress about any arms sales to Iran. The Presidential Records Act was violated when John Poindexter destroyed a finding by President Reagan. Fawn Hall, secretary to Oliver North himself, and John Poindexter all lied to Congress, violating federal law when trying to cover up their illegal activities. Here's a list of 5 of the guilty parties and their sentences. Oliver North was convicted in federal court of destroying official documents, accepting an illegal gift, and of aiding and abetting the obstruction of Congress in November 1986. His punishment did not include jail time, but 1,200 hours of community service, a $150,000 fine, and 3-year suspended sentence. These convictions were reversed on appeal. Fundraiser Carl Chanel pleaded guilty in 1987 to 1 felony count of conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and received 2 years probation in return for full cooperation with ongoing investigations. Surrounded by controversy, Caspar Weinberger and Robert McFarlane were pardoned preemptively by President George H.W. Bush prior to trial in 1992. John Poindexter was found guilty of 5 felonies. He was sentenced to 6 months imprisonment on each charge to be served concurrently, or for a total of 6 months. However, because of the issue of potential contamination of the trial by the immunized testimony Poindexter gave to Congress, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit reversed his convictions. In conclusion, the Reagan administration and CIA purposefully bypassed the Boland Act to support the Contras in Nicaragua and illegally sold arms to Iran in violation of the president's own executive order and Congress. A governmental agency such as the CIA, whose budget, operations, and assessments are all conducted under secrecy, that deliberately bypasses the laws of Congress to undertake illegal activities is in serious violation of the Constitution and infringes on the inalienable rights of the citizens of the United States of America. I want to thank the New York Times, Brown University as my sources for this podcast, and music by Zapsplat. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to The Paul Christopher Show. For feedback, you can tweet me at Christopher Show, Kristoffer, or visit my website, paulchristopher.com, Kristoffer. Thanks and have a great day.